गरीब देते हैं पुरसा तुम्हारे प्यारों का। सलाम तुम पे हमारे रसूल के प्यारों।
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطاهرين. ولا تحسبن الذين قتلوا في سبيل الله أمواتا بل أحياء عند ربهم يرزقون. Do not reckon those who are killed in the way of God that they are dead. They are alive and they are being sustained beside their lords. Today is the day of sorrow and grief for the followers of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad. And what makes the day important is that by coming here, by shedding tears, by remembering the occasion, we are passing on the message of Hussein alayhi salam. You could not find a better way to pass this message down. Of course, something went seriously wrong when Banu Umayyah came to power, and someone should have alerted the Ummah. It was not enough to say something. It was not enough to advise and preach, because then they were written in the books, and then there were controversies whether this is authentic, not authentic, whether really Hussein said this or didn't say this. It didn't work. What was really needed was something dramatic, something which could reverberate throughout the history. And this is what Hussein did. We are today here to commemorate something which happened almost 1400 years ago. But we know very consciously that we are doing something to help that message get through to the Ummah, and it is getting through. It has come down. You hear that anyone shedding tear for Hussein alayhi salam, all their sins will be forgiven. Anyone going to a majlis of Hussein alayhi salam, such and such reward is given to them. Don't take these lightly. You don't know what important job you are doing by shedding tears and by coming to these majalis. You are passing on the message to your children, and they are passing it to their children by continuing these sessions and these meetings. If it was just dry meetings, dry sessions, dry commemoration, it didn't last much. That's why Hussein alayhi salam said, "Ana qatilul abarah." I am the one who's killed, but who's accompanied, who's seen off by tears. And this is how this whole story has been kept alive. And the message of Hussein reverberates that, look, something went wrong after my grandfather, and you should know that, and the whole Muslim Ummah should know that. Today you see a big awakening around the Muslim world. The commemoration of Hussein is not something which is specifically attributed to Shias. We have Sunnis also who commemorate. We have great Sunni scholars who have written this story. Tabari has reproduced the whole story which Mufid has reproduced from the earlier historians. As-Suyuti, when he is writing, Suyuti is one of the greatest Maliki Sunni scholars of the 10th century. When he wrote his Tarikhul Khulafa, he writes about Khulafa after the Prophet. Well, he's Sunni, of course, Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, Ali, Hassan, alayhimus salam, and then Muawiyah, Yazid, and continues. When he comes to the story of Yazid, he writes about what he did, what happened during his time, and then he says, and there is a story at the time of Yazid, a battle took place between forces of Yazid and Hussein, grandson of the Prophet, that my heart cannot bear to report. This is a Sunni scholar. My heart cannot bear to report. So I completely ignore mentioning this story, and I just say, may Allah curse Yazid and Umar ibn Sa'd and Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad. You know, in Iran, we call these majalis matam, we call it Roza Khani. I don't know whether any of you have heard Roza Khani. They say we go to Roza. You know why they call it Roza Khani? Because in the 10th century, a book was written about the tragedy of Karbala, which was recited in every circle who commemorated Hussein alayhi salam by the name Rawzatul Shuhada. That's the garden of the martyrs, Rawzatul Shuhada. And then it became a custom to recite this book in every majlis as a maqtal. And then, of course, even after that book was replaced by other books, customs were changed, still they call these majalis Roza Khani. And you know this Rawzat al-Shuhada, this book was written by a Sunni alim, Mullah Hussein Kashafi. So this is not something which is specifically related to Shia. This is, as we mentioned in Ziyarat Ashura, مصيبة ما أعظمها وأعظم رزيتها في الإسلام. This musibah, this grief, this calamity is something which befell Islam. It's not only Shias who grieve. Everyone grieves. Of course, Banu Umayyah would not grieve. They made it a day of joy. And of course, we have today some followers of Banu Umayyah who regard them to be tabu'un and companions and sahaba of the Prophet, and they say we shouldn't say anything against them. Okay, we are not talking about them. These are a minority group. The whole Muslim ummah was shaken by the martyrdom of Hussein alayhi salam. Now, the best thing to do today is just to go through the story once again, reciting Maqtal, reciting Rawza, like the book like Rawzat al-Shuhada. However, from different books of Maqtal, I have put together something in form of a story. When you hear it, it's like a story, but don't think this is a story. It's just taken from very authentic books of Maqtal, put together here. And unfortunately, I have not summarized this, and this could not be finished in a couple of hours, as we have 1 hour now, 1 hour in the evening. So I have to summarize it. I have to cut some pieces. So if I pause and I just go silent, please bear with me so that I choose the most suitable bits and pieces to recite here. Now, I want to start from the moment when Hussein alayhi salam meets Hur, the army of Hur. You know, Hur was a very brave commander of Kufa. He was not a politician. And the very simple proof for it was that he was completely unaware of what was going on in Kufa. He was summoned, he was sent to the battle, and he didn't know what was going on in Kufa. He was a man of military, not a man of politics. Now, when of course Hussein, the news of Hussein's travel towards Kufa reached Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad, what he did, he mobilized a huge army. And he himself went near Kufa in Nukhayla, he camped there. It was a place for camping. Even Amir al-Mu'minin, when he was going to Safin, he camped at Nukhayla. He camped there and he ordered all troops to come and camp there. And he sealed Kufa in a way that no one could go out or taking any news out, so that Imam Hussein is informed of what's happening in Kufa, and also not allowing anyone to join Hussein alayhi salam. And after he had camped there and he had mobilized a huge army, he sent Hur with 1,000 troops to go and find Hussein and escort him to Kufa, so that if the news of demise of martyrdom of Muslim and Hani and what happened in Kufa reached Hussein, Hussein does not change his mind and go back. Because this was the moment when Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad thought, we have the power, we can crush Hussein very easily, we shouldn't let him slip off our hands. Not knowing that Hussein already had heard the news, but had decided to come. You might say, why? I tell you, because there was no other place to go. Nowhere in all the Muslim land was ready to receive Hussein alayhi salam. And this was the calamity. Now, Hur was sent off with 1,000 men, and Hussein was coming with about 200 men, because then later on many of them dispersed and only those few remained with him. And the two caravans met, the two army of troops met somewhere not very close to Kufa. And I continue the story from there. I just read it out. The caravan of Hussein is on the move. Many camels carry only water. Ali Akbar is riding his horse beside his father, keeping an eye on him while he is overtaken by sleep on the horseback. Suddenly, Hussein opens his eyes and whispers to himself, La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Ali Akbar is curious. He asks, what is it, my father? Hussein smiles and says, nothing. But Ali Akbar is still looking on, waiting for an explanation. Hussein says, my eyes were overtaken by sleep. Something whispered in my ears that these people travel and the shadow of death accompanies them. Ali Akbar goes deep in his thoughts, and after a short while he says, Father, are we not in the right? By God we are, says Hussein. Then why should we be afraid of death? Hussein smiles in Ali Akbar's face and says, may God reward you, my son. Suddenly, their attention is caught by a cry of Allahu Akbar. Zuhair, Abbas, and John turn. What is it? Says Zuhair. One of the men who shouted says, Kufa. Zuhair replies, what do you mean? We are miles away from Kufa. The man says, look, aren't those the palm trees of Kufa I see from here? Everyone looks at the direction shown by the man. There's dust and something like trees. Zuhair's sharp eyes, however, see something quite different. Spears and banners of an army. My lord, says Zuhair to Hussein, they are not palm trees. They are spearheads and banners. Zuhair and Abbas ride quickly toward what they have seen. On the other side, Hur, with spearheads and floating banners in abundance, is moving with his troop. Hur is riding with a huge number. As I said, there were about 1,000 men, about 5 times the men of Hussein alayhi salam. Zuhair goes to Hussein and says, "My lord, do you see that?" Hussein, who's looking at the troop, says, "I know, I see them." Abbas says, "There are about 1,000 men." Hussein says, "Would anyone know where the closest hill might be from here? Since our number is small, we have to take high ground positions." One of the companions points to the right-hand side and suggests, "My lord, Dhu Hasam is a couple of miles away from here. I think that is the closest to us." "Yes, he's right, my lord," says Zuhair. "Move the caravan over to that side," commands Hussein. Hur's vanguards race to him with full speed and inform him, "Commander, they are changing course," informing him of what Hussein is doing. "Where to?" asks Hur. "They are heading towards Dhu Hasam." Abu Sha'sa, Hur's first officer, suggests they probably want to have the upper position and the hills there when they face us. Hur orders to Abu Sha'sa towards Dhu Hasam full speed. However, Hussein's troops have already taken positions on the skirts of Dhu Hasam. Hur's troops are closing in with full speed. Women and children are scared. Zainab tries to calm them down. Sukaina goes to Abbas and asks, "Who are they, uncle? Do they want to fight?" "I don't know," replies Abbas. "We'll have to wait and see." Wahab, the Christian, approaches Ali Akbar, who is standing beside Abbas, and asks, "Who are they, friends or foes?" Ali Akbar replies, "We will find out," because it was quite possible that troops were coming to join Hussein alayhi salam. He then tried to his brother. In his company, Hussein moves towards Hur, who's now sitting on his horse, waiting. Hussein says, "Salamun alaykum." "Wa alaykum as-salam," replies Hur. Hussein asks, "With us or against us?" Hur casts his eyes down and pauses for a second, then looks up and says, "Against you." Hussein just repeats, "La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah." Then he looks at the troops under Hur's command. They gasp heavily along with their horses due to the futile race they made to try to secure the Dhu Hasam heights. They all seem dry and thirsty. Hussein addresses Abbas, "Give them water. Let the horses have a few sips as well." "Yes, my lord," replies Abbas. They leave. Hur stays put, wondering. The water carrier camels are brought forth close to the Kufan troops. Huge water skins are taken off their backs. The troops rush forward to drink. Wahab, Ja'far and some other companions of Hussein pour water in leather buckets and let the horses take a few sips. A man offers some water to Hur, but deep in his thoughts he refuses to drink. His eyes search for Hussein and he finds him sitting on his horse looking at a man who tries to drink water but doesn't know how to open the aperture of the water skin. Hussein goes close to him. "Twist the outlet, my brother." The man is incapable of performing the simple action required from him. "We don't have such water skins in Iraq," says the man. "I'm not used to this." "Just twist it, I said," says Hussein. The man cannot do it. Hussein goes forth. dismounts. This man is Ali ibn Ta'an al-Maharibi, who is mentioned in the history, that one of the men who came and couldn't drink water. Hussein goes forth, dismounts and twists the outlet for the man and lets him drink. Hur comes towards them. Hussein leaves the man and rides his horse again. Hussein, says Hur, I have not come here to fight you. My mission is only to escort you safely to Ibn Ziyad. Hussein replies, what is your name? Hur, son of Yazid of Banu Riyah, says Hur. Hussein, I have heard of you. Who is your first officer? Abu Sha'sa, son of Qais. What do you say? Says Hur. Hussein looks up to the sky and says, it's time for midday prayer now, Hur. Let's pray first. You pray with your men and I pray with mine. No, we all pray behind you, says Hur. They pray. Hussein has finished his prayers, but is yet sitting on his prayer rock, reciting some dhikr with his eyes closed. The congregation behind him is huge, all sitting and waiting for an address from Hussein. Hussein stands and turns towards the crowd. All praise belongs to the Lord, whose blessings cannot be counted, starts Hussein. If you fear him and recognize the right for those who deserve it, you will please him. Now listen to me and judge fairly. I did not set out towards you before your messengers came to me and your letters reached me. You told me that you did not have a leader and that you hoped that the Lord would guide you through me. We are already guided by the Prophet, says Abu Sha'sa. Hussein responds feverishly, so why are you quiet? Did not your Prophet say that whoever sees an oppressive sovereign who violates the values of faith and treats people with injustice and wickedness, then does not say or do anything, would be in the eyes of God the same as that sovereign? Do you not see that justice is not practiced and wickedness is not resisted? What should a believer do in such a condition but to crave for death? Everyone keeps quiet. Hussein calms down and continues. At any rate, if you still want me here, I'm here to make a pledge with you. And if you have changed your minds, I will go back to where I have come from. Hur stands up and says, we do not know anything about those letters and messengers that you talk about. Hussein calls Uqba, son of Sum'an. Uqba, bring those letters. Uqba brings a camel with 2 huge saddlebags full of letters. He opens one of the saddlebags and the letters spill out onto the ground. Hur and Abu Sha'sa inspect some of the letters and the names. Visibly ashamed, Hur says, we are not from those who have written you these letters. My orders are to escort you to Kufa and make sure that you meet Amir ibn Ziyad. Death would be easier for you than that, replies Hussein. He then turns to Abbas and says, ride. Yes, my lord, says Abbas. Abbas conveys the order. Hussein's men ride and wait for the ladies to ride on the camels. Hur points to his commanders to get ready. When Hussein's caravan intends to go back, they find Hur with his troops obstructing their way. Hussein's troop asks them to move out of the way, but they stay where they are. Some wrangling of horse necks is followed by exchange of lashes of whips. Hussein goes to Hur and says with an angry tone, may your mother mourn you. What do you want, Hur? Hur gasps angrily, but tries to calm himself down. He replies, had any other man in all Arabia mentioned my mother, I too would have said the same of his mother. But your mother is Fatima, daughter of the Prophet. I cannot mention her name, but with respect and honor. Hussein replies, why do you do this then? Hur, I have orders to take you to Amir ibn Ziyad. Hussein, I will not follow you. Hur, I will not leave you. Hussein, I will not follow you. Hur, I will not leave you. Zuhair intervenes. How dare you speak to the grandson of the Prophet like that, says Zuhair. Hur casts his eyes down, and after a moment of thought suggests, let's make a compromise, Hussein. Nothing in my orders tells me that I should fight you. Zuhair asked, what are your orders then? Hur, my orders are not to let you go back to Medina and to escort you to Emir ibn Ziyad. Let's take a route that goes neither to Medina nor to Kufa until I write to Emir and ask him about my duties. Abu Sha'sa looks at Hur with amazement. Sir, but Hur replies, shut up. Abu Sha'sa keeps silent. Hur waits anxiously for Hussein's reply. Agreed, says Hussein. Hur heaves a sigh of relief, and after Hussein and his companions turn away, whispers to himself, I hope God will relieve me from having a share of your blood on my hands. The small troops of Hussein are moving forward accompanied by a large army of Hur. So the compromise was made. Hur and Hussein are moving towards a direction which neither goes to Medina nor to Kufa. The small troops of Hussein are moving forward accompanied by the large army of Hur. As they are riding, Hur draws his horse near Hussein's mount and says, Hussein, fear God in what you are doing to yourself. I swear by the Lord that if you decide to fight, you will be killed. Do you frighten me with death, says Hussein. I know the enmity of the crime of killing the grandson of the Prophet. I know the enormity of the crime of killing the grandson of the Prophet would not stop you from killing me. But I say, as the poet of Aus said, when his cousins discouraged him from helping the Prophet, saying, I proceed, and if I die, this is a very famous poem that Hussein alayhi salam quoted, and all histories have mentioned this. I proceed, and if I die, death is not dishonor for the chivalrous when their intent is truth and they submit to the Lord in their struggle. Should I live, I would not regret, and should I die, I would not be blamed. The one to blame is the one who lives in humiliation. Hur stays silent and goes deep into his thought. Now the armies move forward until they reach the Euphrates. There is a palm orchard by the river and a few villages scattered round. The two armies of Hur and Hussein are moving side by side in a hilly area. They're about a mile from the water, with Hur's army being placed in between Hussein's army and the river. The contrast of the small number of Hussein's companions and the large army of Hur is outstanding. A horseman looms from the hilltop and gallops full speed towards the two traveling groups. Attentions are drawn towards him, and everyone is curious to see which group he goes to. On his arrival, he looks at Hussein's camp, but without greeting them, he goes to Hur. The two groups draw to a halt. Salamun alaykum, addresses the horseman. Hur is addressed by the horseman. Salamun alaykum. Wa alaykum as-salam, replies Hur. The rider takes a rolled parchment out of his scarf and stretches it out for Hur. An order from Emir ibn Ziyad. Hur pushes his hand back and says, read it. The messenger unrolls the parchment. A letter from Emir. Leave the compliments, says Hur, just read the main part. The horseman seems upset, but does what he is told. The horseman reads, when my messenger comes to you and my letter reaches you, thwart Hussein from moving. Do not let him camp, but in an unprotected wasteland with neither water nor vegetation. The messenger seems reticent and hesitates. Hur, continue. The horseman continues, I have ordered my messenger to remain with you until you carry out my instructions. So the messenger is now a guard on Hur. Hur's gaze lingers on the man's face for a while, and then he exhales a large breath. As if reluctantly, he then steers his horse towards Hussein. Unfortunately, says Hur, this is the end of our journey together. Emir ibn Ziyad has ordered me to make you camp until his army arrives. Where, says Hussein. Hur, right here. Zuhair shouts, you are joking. This is no place to camp. We have women and children with us. I know, says Hur. Muslim son of Awsaja intervenes. Shame on you, Hur. There are many villages close by. Let us camp in one of them, pointing to different directions with his hand. Over here is Ghazariya, Nineveh, or Shufayya. I have been instructed to make you camp where you are, says Hur, in an unprotected place. This man has been sent to me to supervise the implementation of the instruction. Zuhair says to Hussein, my lord, let us fight them. By God, fighting them now will be easy. Later on their army will come with such numbers that no power would be able to stand it. I'm not here. I'm not the one who begins the fight, says Hussein calmly. Zuhair exhales with sorrow. Hussein dismounts and his companions follow out of respect. Hussein looks around as if the place is familiar to him. The vision of Prophet John's head being offered to Salome visits him. He sits and takes a handful of soil. He then stands up and smells it. He closes his eyes, raises his head, and opens his eyes towards the sky. His eyes are wet. He asks gently, what is the name of this place? This is Ghazariya, my lord, says Zuhair. Hussein shakes his head in disagreement. Any other name, says Hussein. It is also called Nineveh, says Ibn Umayr. Hussein again disapproves. What do you mean, my lord, says Muslim son of Awsaja. This specific wasteland is called Karbala. Yes, this is Karbala, says Hussein. Well, the promise is to be fulfilled. He smells the soil again and says, camp. This is where we are destined to alight. His order is repeated by his men throughout the caravan. Everyone is surprised and tries to find out what is happening. Now, after a couple of days, Umar ibn Sa'd arrives with 4,000 troops. Now there was 1,000 troops. Then there are armies and troops coming and joining. The first was Umar ibn Sa'd coming with 4,000 of his men. And then every tribe coming with 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. So as I said, 30,000 is the minimum that we can imagine would have been present there. Umar ibn Sa'd arrives in Karbala with 4,000 troops. Hur and a few of his officers receive him on their horses. Welcome, commander, says Hur. Hur, I'm happy to have you under my command, says Umar ibn Sa'd. At your service, commander, says Hur. Brief me about the situation. They move away from the troops and come closer to Hussein's camps. While Umar ibn Sa'd is looking at the encampment from top of a hill, Hur does the briefing. I made them camp here, away from any well and water, as the Amir ordered. Good, says Umar ibn Sa'd. Hur continues, their number is significantly reduced since we arrived. Some of them have left. I didn't stop them, as I considered it would be in our favor. You did the right thing, says Umar ibn Sa'd. It's only Hussein that we want. They have hardly 100 men, says Hur. What do we need this huge army for, commander? Umar ibn Sa'd grins and says, this is not the army, Hur. It's just the beginning. The real army is on the way. Hur looks at Ibn Sa'd, perplexed. Umar ibn Sa'd, after other troops come, Umar ibn Sa'd summons all the commanders to his command tent. A map of the area is spread in front of Ibn Sa'd. How many troops have arrived? Asked Ibn Sa'd. 30,000 with a dispatch which arrived today, replies Hur. More troops are still on their way from distant tribes. I hope the sheer magnitude of our number dissuades Hussein from his stubborn resistance, says Umar ibn Sa'd. Kathir, one of the commanders, present, clutches his fist and replies, no, this is the time we can crush him in our fist. Ibn Sa'd continues without paying any attention to Kathir's statement. I need to open negotiations with Hussein. Urwa, son of Qais, go to him and ask him what cause has brought him here. Urwa, visibly embarrassed, replies, would the commander relieve me from such a mission? Why? Asked Umar ibn Sa'd. Forgive me, but I sent him a letter inviting him to come. Ibn Sa'd inhales heavily and calls Shabath. Shabath casts his eyes down as well. Ibn Sa'd looks at other commanders. They all sheepishly show their embarrassment because all had invited Hussein to come. So how could they go and ask him, why have you come here? Kathir comes forth and suggests, I will go to him, commander, and if you wish, I can kill him on the spot. Ibn Sa'd shouts at him, I don't want you to assassinate him, just ask him what cause has brought him here. I don't know if we should go through all these or we go to night of Ashura and then to the day of Ashura, because I'm sure we cannot cover all these in a couple of hours. What are the views? Should we continue with this or we go to night of Ashura? We go to night of Ashura, okay. So please recite a salawat until on the night of Ashura, Hussein gathers all his companions. He is standing on a large rock talking to them. Ali Zainul Abidin watches them, watches from the tent but can only hear faint sounds. He struggles hard and comes out of his bed and with great hardship moves to get closer to the gathering. He gradually starts to discern the words, hearing his father's praise for the Lord. We praise you, says Hussein, in comfort and in pain. You have honored us with your message and have taught us your book and have given us hearing, sight and hearts. So place us among the thankful. He stops and looks at his companions for a short while and then continues. I know of no companions better and more loyal than you, nor of any house more pious and more close-knit than my house. May God reward you all on my behalf. I suppose this is the last day that we have with these people. However, they don't want anyone but me, so I permit all of you to leave. I have released you from the pledge you have given me. You can leave with no blame. Tears flow down Ali Zainul Abidin's cheeks. Hussein continues, night is falling around us. Take it as a cover and go. Abbas stands and replies with a choked voice, with tearful eyes, go. Go where? Shall we go to live on after you? May God never show us that day. We will never leave you, not before our blood is shed before yours. Aun and Ja'far stand up and say, how could we go on living after you, uncle? What shall we say to our mother Zainab if we leave you here in this desert alone with all these wolves surrounding you? Hussein turns to the brothers of Muslim, son of Aqil, and says, sons of Aqil, enough of your blood has already been shed. You have already proved your loyalty beyond any doubt. Your brother Muslim has been killed, so please leave now as I have permitted you. Muslim's brother stand and say, what would the people then tell us if we leave you? That we deserted our Lord, our elder, and the sons of our uncle who was the best of uncles, that we did not shoot a single arrow with them, nor thrust a spear, nor strike a sword to protect them. No, we rather ransom you with our lives, property, and families, and we'll fight alongside you until we meet your destiny. How abominable life would be after you. Then Zuhair stands up and says, my Lord, your family have always spoken honorably, as is expected from them. By God, I would prefer to be killed and then recalled to life, and then be killed 1,000 times in this manner, that in this way God should protect your life and the life of these young men of your household. Then Muslim son of Awsaj arises and speaks with the same firmness and conviction. My Lord, how should we excuse ourselves before God if we leave you alone? No, by God, I will stab them with my spear until it breaks. I will strike them with my sword so long as I can hold the hilt. If I have no weapon left to fight them with, I will throw stones at them. We will not leave you until God knows that we have preserved through you the honor of the Prophet in his absence. If I knew that I would die and then be revived and then burnt and then revived and then scattered, and that would be done to me 70 times, I would not have left you before I met my death before you. So why should I leave you when there is only one death and then the blessing to which there is no end? Silence prevails for a few moments. May God reward you all, says Hussein, but you should know that tomorrow all of you will meet your death. Qasim, who is standing right beside his uncle, asks with concern, shall I meet my death as well, uncle? Because he was very young, he was only 13. Hussein looks at him kindly and says, how does death taste for you? Sweeter than honey, says Qasim. Hussein nods and pats him on his shoulder. Tears come to his eyes, trying to hide them. He leaves quickly. His sister Zainab, who has been watching the whole event from her tent door, runs after him, but she stops after Hussein disappears from sight. Hur in the other camp, and Qurra, his friend, son of Qais, are sitting together in a tent, talking under the glowing light of lamp. Music and happy chanting is heard from outside. You know, says Hur, most of these commanders are among the people who wrote letters inviting Hussein to come to Kufa. How can they fight him now? They have been bought, says Qurra. How cheap their price is, says Hur. Well, we didn't write any letters, at least, says Qurra. But why have they cut him off from water, says Hur. They want him to surrender, says Qurra. They know very well that he would not surrender, says Hur. Tomorrow is their last day. Why don't they let them have some water? You know, during all these years I have learned not to ask too many questions, says Qurra. Hur keeps silent. Then he stands and goes out of the tent, passes a group of men who are chanting and dancing with swords before he stops in an open area. Deep in his thoughts, he looks at the moon and then at Hussein's encampment. In Hussein's tent, Joan is fixing Hussein's sword for tomorrow. Hussein sits close by and watching the sharp blade of the sword, and deep in thought begins to recite a few lines of poetry. O world, shame on you as a friend. How many a companion or seeker have you turned into a corpse? By the morning and the evening, simply as a matter of course, all matters rest with the Almighty for their eventual root, and all living beings will one day follow me suit. Zainab, who's nursing Ali Zainul Abidin in her tent, which is next to Hussein's, hears what Hussein was reciting. Ali as well hears it and chokes, and turns his face to hide his tears from his aunt. Zainab, however, cannot hold herself. She cries and shouts with a choking voice, "My grief, he's preparing himself for death," because these poetry was something which was recited before death. She jumps out of the tent, inadvertently sending a few things flying out of her way. As she rushes into Hussein's tent, she sits down by his knees, and her words cry out, "O lamentation, O sorrow, anguish, heartache and grief! Am I losing my sweet brother? Would that death deprive me as well of my own life today? I'm losing my mother Fatima, my father Ali, and my brother Hassan yet again. Oh brother, you have always been my solace of heart and my refuge when the pain of missing them tore me apart." She cries loudly. Hussein caresses her head and talks to her with tearful eyes. "Zainab, my dear sister, Zainab, don't let emotions overtake you." He then chokes and stops talking. Zainab continues crying. Hussein whispers a parable to himself. If the sand grouse is left alone, it will sleep peacefully and forget its heartfelt moan. "So your life is wrenched from you by force," says Zainab. "This pierces my heart and rasps my soul even more." She bewails and laments and cries. Hussein sits down beside her and says kindly, "My dear sister, take comfort in the consolation of God. Every soul has to taste death. The Lord has decreed so in His primordial will. He sends them forth and takes them back, and He is unique alone. Our grandfather was better than me. Our father was better than me. Our mother was better than me. Look what happened to all of them." Zainab has stopped crying. She quietly looks at her brother with tearful eyes. "I would like you to make an oath for me," asks Hussein. "What oath?" says Zainab. "Your hardship is yet to begin. Give me your oath that when I am destroyed, you will not tear your clothes, nor scratch your face, nor cry out of grief." Zainab replies, "It is so hard to part from you, brother." "Give me your oath," says Hussein. "You have a huge mission ahead of you and a lot to look after." Zainab nods painfully. In the twilight of the morning, some stars are still visible. This is now the day of Ashura. The sound of Hussein's voice reverberates through the stars, the moon and the surrounding hilltops. The sound of army trumpets and drums is heard in the backdrop. Hussein is whispering to his Lord. This is the famous prayer of Hussein in the morning of Ashura. "My Lord, it is you in whom I trust amid all grief. You are my hope in all hardship. How many an affliction fell upon me in which the heart waned. The means diminished, the friends deserted, and the foes rejoiced. But I brought it to you and your help alone. I sought, but I brought it to you in my heart." The army of Ibn Sa'd is seen fully prepared and starts moving forward with its cavalry, foot soldiers and archers. Drums are beaten and army trumpets are blown. On the other side, the small band of Hussein's soldiers are standing in full preparation. Hussein is kneeling beside his horse some distance from them, saying his prayer. He continues, "You are the source of all grace, the possessor of all good, and the ultimate resort of all desire." After saying his prayer, Hussein rides his horse and goes to his army. Despite the small size, It is organized as a standard army with cavalry, foot soldiers and archers. Hussein shouts, "Right wing," Zuhair replies, "At your command, my lord, with a cavalry of 16. Hussein shouts, "Left wing," Habib, son of Muzahir, replies, "At your command, my lord, with a cavalry of 16. The foot soldiers do not exceed 40 men. Hussein lifts up the standard, which is tucked in the ground, and calls Abbas. Abbas comes forth. "Hussein, you carry the standard." Abbas firmly takes hold of the standard. The Kufan army is now far away from their tents and is approaching in imposing formation. Amr, son of Hajjaj, is in command of the right wing. He was one of those who wrote letter to Hussein. Shamr is in command of the left wing. Urwa, son of Qais, is in command of the cavalry. This man was again one of those who had written letters to Hussein. Shabath, again one other who had written letter to Hussein. Shabas is commander of the foot soldiers, and Durayd carries the standard. Hussein has positioned his army with their tents at the rear in a semicircle formation. As the Kufan army comes forward, Shem charges with his cavalry to attack Hussein from the back of the tents. Hussein and his men watch them approaching. They get closer with no visible reaction from Hussein's side. As they draw near, Hussein orders the firewood in the trenches to be set alight. Shem and his men manage to stop and calm their scared horses down with some difficulty. As they find no way to penetrate Hussein's camp from behind, Shem shouts at the top of his voice, "Hussein, you have rushed headlong into the fire of the hell before the day of judgment." "Who is that?" says Hussein. It sounds like Shem, because Hussein knew Shem from the time of his father. Shem was a commander of Amirul Mu'minin in Safin. Subhanallah. You see how life changes and how destinies change. "Who is that?" says Hussein. "It sounds like Shem." "Yes, my lord, it is him," says Habib. Hussein calls out, "You are more deserving of that, Shem." Muslim, son of Awsaja, sees Shem within shooting range and takes his bow and targets him. But Hussein pushes his arrow down. "Let me shoot at him, my lord," says Muslim, son of Awsaja. "He's a wicked criminal and a terrible tyrant. God has put him in our reach." "No," says Hussein, "I'm not willing to be the one who begins the fight." This was Muharram, wasn't it? This is Shahrul Haram. Fighting is haram in this month. Muslim, son of Awsaja, is frustrated and disappointed. Shem and his troops return towards the Kufan army. Hussein looks at the Kufa army and after a short reflection says, "Bring me my camel." John brings his camel to him and helps him to mount it. Hussein goes towards the Kufan army, flanked by Habib, son of Muzahir, and Burair. Seeing him approaching, Umar ibn Sa'd orders the trumpets and drums to be silenced. Hussein draws close and, stopping just a few meters away from the army, calls out at the top of his voice, "O people of Iraq, listen to my words and do not haste, and give me justice in what I advise you. If you don't see justice in my words, then carry out your plan against me without giving me any respite. My trust is in the one who sent down the book, and he takes care of the righteous. Trace back my descent and consider who I am. Then look back at yourself and ponder if you are blameless. Is it right for you to slay me and to violate the honor of my women folk? Am I not the son of the daughter of your prophet? Was not my father Ali the first person who ever believed in the messenger of the Lord? Have you not heard the words of the messenger of God, who concerning me, my brother and myself said, these are the two laws of the youth of the paradise? I swear by the Lord that I have never uttered a single lie since I learned that God hates liars. But if you think I am a liar, There are among you those who can attest to what I say. Ask the companions of the Prophet who still live among you. Ask Jabir ibn Abdullah Ansari. Ask Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, Sahl ibn Sa'd al-Sa'idi, Zayd ibn Arqam, and Anas ibn Malik to tell you that they heard these words from the Messenger of God. Is this not enough to prevent you shedding my blood? Shem moves his horse forward and says, I have no faith in God if I understand what you say. Habib shouts at him, and I testify that you are correct. You do not understand anything of what he says, for God has sealed your heart. Hussein continues without paying any attention. If you are in doubt about what I reported from the Prophet, then are you in any doubt that I am the son of the daughter of your Prophet? By God, there is no son of a prophet other than me among you and among the peoples from east to west. Shame on you. Are you seeking retribution from me for one of your dead whom have I killed? Or for a wound which I have inflicted? Or a property for a property that I have expropriated? Habib and Muslim are in tears. Most eyes on the other side are cast downwards. Hussein calls some of them by name. Shabath, son of Rab'i, Hajjar, son of Abjar, Qais, son of Ash'as, did you not write to me, inviting me to come to you? Qais, son of Ash'as, replies, we don't know what you are talking about. Submit to the authority of Yazid. He will treat you the way you like. Hussein, disappointed from their response, shouts, by God, I will not give you my hand in humiliation, nor I will flee from you like a fugitive. I say, as it is said in the Holy Book, I seek the protection of my Lord and your Lord from every conceited, arrogant person who does not believe in the day of reckoning. Hussein goes back and makes his mount kneel. Uqba, son of Sum, unties its reins. The drums start beating again, and the army continues advancing forward. Hur is visibly impressed by Hussein's speech. Accompanied by his friend, Qurra, son of Qais, he slowly moves toward Ibn Sa'd and asks, do you really mean to fight this man? Ibn Sa'd replies with unusual determination, yes, a battle the easiest of which will be falling of heads and flight of limbs. Wouldn't what he has offered you meet your satisfaction, says Hur. Omar replies, it would if the matter rested with me, but your emir has refused. Hur wants to say something, but forgoes and leaves. Qurra follows him. When they are some distance from the main army, Hur stops and says, Qurra, have you watered your horse today? Why do you ask, says Qurra. Don't you want to water it, says Hur. Qurra is surprised by his suggestion and asks, why do you want to leave the battle? I said, don't you want to water your horse, says Hur. Qurra nods and says, yes, I was actually just about to do that. He leaves in surprise. Hur stands alone and after a few thoughtful moments moves his horse slowly and hesitantly towards Hussein's camp. A dispatch of Ibn Sa'd's soldiers far ahead of the main army see Hur approaching. Who's that man? Send one of the soldiers in the dispatch. Their commander replies, don't you know who that is? It's Hur, the bravest man in all Kufa. It looks like he wants to start a single battle. When Hur passes them, the commander asks him, are you going for single combat, Hur? Hur does not reply, but they notice that he's trembling. Your behavior is surprising, Hur, says the commander. I have never seen you act like that. If I was ever asked who was the bravest of the Kufans, I would not have mentioned any name but yours. What is this shaking in the battlefield I see in you? Hur replies, I see my soul suspended between heaven and hell. Then as if talking to himself, he continues resolutely, and I will not choose anything unless it leads to paradise, even if I'm cut to pieces and burned to ashes. He whips his horse and gallops over towards Hussein's camp. Hussein is sitting on his horse, flanked by a couple of his companions. They see Hur approaching. Is he coming to fight? No, I don't think so, replies Hussein. They are still far away. Hur comes close, stands before Hussein, drops his shield and his hood. He hesitates about what to say for a few moments, and then speaks with a quivering voice. Grandson of the Prophet, may my soul be your ransom. I am the one who prevented you from going back. I forced you onto this route and made you to camp in this barren place, but I never thought that these people would reject what you offered them or would take such a position against you. I swear by God, had I known they would end up treating you the way I see now, I would never have done what I did. He pauses for a while and then says with tears in his eyes, now I repent to God for all that I have done. Would there be any chance for repentance in this at all? Hussein smiles at him and replies, there is always a chance for repentance as long as you breathe. May the Lord accept your repentance. Get down and have some rest. I'm more useful on my horse, says Hur, although eventually they will bring me down. Do as you wish, replies Hussein. May God have mercy on you. Zuhair extends his hand towards him, and while holding his hand fast, he says, we don't have the coolness of water here to offer you, but we greet you with the warmth of hearts. Hur nods and moves towards the camps to see for himself the horrific scenes of thirst and terrified women and children. Some are sucking the dry mouthpieces of water skins. Some have put moist pieces of broken jars on their bellies, and others are sucking their knuckles. All faces are dry and all lips blistery. Tears flow helplessly down Hur's eyes. He turns his rein and gallops resolutely towards Ibn Sa'd's army. They watch him getting closer with surprise. He stands at a good distance and shouts, people of Kufa, may your mothers be deprived of their sons, and tears come to their eyes. Have you invited this righteous man to your land? Then when he has come to you, have you handed him over to his enemies? Did you claim that you would protect him with your lives, and now you insist to kill him? You have laid hold of his life. You have seized his throat. You have encircled him on every side, preventing him to travel in God's land. You have prevented him, his children, his womenfolk, and his people to drink from water of Euphrates, of which all creatures freely drink. They are likely to die of thirst. How wickedly you have treated the offspring left by Muhammad. May God not give you water to drink on the day of thirst. A few archers from Kufa camp come forward and pelt him with arrows. He deflects them with his shield and goes back and stands in front of Hussein. Ibn Sa'd, angry of Hur's defection, yells at Durayd. Durayd brings forth the standard. While Durayd is coming forth, Ibn Sa'd puts an arrow in his bow and shoots, shouting, be my witness before Ibn Ziyad that I shot the first arrow. The arrow sits in the ground a few yards from Hussein's and his companions. Muslim son of Awsajah says, so it begins. He goes before Hussein and says, my lord, on behalf of all your companions, may I have a request? May I request a favor? What favor? Says Hussein. That no man from the house of Prophet ever goes forth for battle before we all have ceased to exist. We very much hope that our request is granted, so that our hearts rest assured that we have defended the family of our Prophet with the blood that runs in our heart. And then the battle starts. I have to finish here, and inshallah I will continue this very sad story in our evening lecture to the end of the story, I hope. As you see, this story is sad enough, you don't need to add anything to it. It's really something that one cannot believe that has taken place, has ever happened to Muslim Ummah, to do such a thing to the grandson of their Prophet. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the honor and the tawfiq that we carry this message forward. Hussein was killed, but he was killed for a purpose, and this message should be carried forward to generations. And I hope inshallah Allah gives us this tawfiq to be the carriers of this message. Wa sallallahu ala Muhammadin wa alihi at-tahirin.
Doctor, one question that we received an email, and this one here is addressed for your response. First of all, is hijab wajib? If so, and not observing it, is it not that you go directly to hell? Your response in this matter is kindly appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Well, hijab is definitely wajib, and it is mentioned both in the Quran, and if we argue about the implications of the verses in the Quran, more explicitly it's mentioned in the Sunnah of the Prophet, which is of course a complement to the verses of the Quran. Now, if someone does not observe it, would they directly go to hell? Well, of course, it's like us committing many sins. Do we directly go to hell? Inshallah, Allah will forgive. But certainly, it's a point of perfection. Perfection of faith, perfection of behavior, a symbol of Islam, and therefore, I think it's very good to be observed. What happens on the Day of Judgment, I don't know. That's Allah is going to judge. But what we know from here is that certainly it's a wajib precept of Islam.
By the same token, I've just been pulled down there, and the question from the men's side is hijab wajib for men?
You mean putting a scarf on their heads? Or?
Maybe this is what they're looking for, is the point of clarification of the concept of hijab.
Any hijab for men?
Yeah, we have hijab for men, but that's of course completely different from what we have as hijab for women. So it's totally a different issue. It's women who should cover all their body, should cover their hair. For men, we don't have this type of hijab, certainly.
Yes. There's a mic here, please.
Is music haram?
Music, what's mainly our majority of our ulama say nowadays is that the music which is haram is the music which is played in those parties in which sins are committed, men or women are mixed and dancing and these things. And since old days, when Aima referred to music as being something haram, referred to this type of music played in these sessions, or something which is very suitable for these type of parties, those type of musics. Otherwise, nowadays, of course, you know, Iran is the country which boasts to have all its behavior and laws according to the Shiite law and according to Maraja, well, they observe music to be one of the a very important part and parcel of radio and television and cinema, and therefore that type of music they do not regard to be haram.
We have a question from the sisters.
I have a series of questions to ask, so I hope this is okay. It's all around the topic of shafa. You mentioned a few nights ago when you were addressing us about what happens on the day of Qiyamah that personalities like the Prophet ﷺ would intercede with Allah to request shafa for us on that day. What is required of us in this dunya to receive such intercession?
Yeah. We have one very clear verse in the Quran which says لا يشفعون إلا لمن ارتضى. They would not intercede for anyone but for those with whom God is pleased. So we know that it all goes back to decision of God, who should be covered under that shafa, who shouldn't be covered. I think the best way we can understand that is the way guidance comes in this world. You see, Prophet, peace be on him, wrote guidance, and he really wanted to guide everyone. So much so that there are many verses in the Quran saying that, for example, لَعَلَّكَ بَاخُعٌ نَفْسَكَ أَلَّا يَكُونُوا مُؤْمِنِينَ. Do you want to kill yourself that they do not believe? It's not in your hand that they believe or not believe. إِنَّكَ لَا تَهْدِي مَنْ أَحْبَبْتَ وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ يَهْدِي مَنْ يَشَاءُ. You cannot guide anyone that you wish. It's Allah who guides anyone He wishes through you. Of course, it's through the Prophet, isn't it? When he brings the message, through him many people are guided. Allah says, it's me who guides, not you. You are just a means for it. Exactly the same translation of the idea would be for shafa'ah. It's not in Prophet's hand to do shafa'ah for anyone he wants. It's just like guidance. He brings guidance. Allah decides who should be guided. He has that power of taking people to paradise with himself, that power of strong soul. But it's not him who decides who should be covered by that. It's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who decides.
So on that token, can these personalities intercede on our behalf with Allah for shafa on this side of the curtain of the dunya? We have many traditions that say you ask different personalities of Islam, be it the Prophet or the Imams, or even the Shuhada Karbala, for shafa.
Yeah.
And that seems to not fit what you're just saying, because ultimately it comes from Allah. So how can you be asking somebody else?
Usually what we do, as far as I can remember, in all dua, in all supplications, we ask God to accept their shafa'ah on our behalf. And that means we ask God to include us under their shafa'ah. Even in salat we say, وَتَقَبَّلْ شَفَاءَتَهُ, accept his shafa'ah, so that he could do shafa'ah for us. So maybe wrongly we view the case that we ask them for their shafa'ah. No, it's Allah from whom we should ask to place us under their shafa'ah.
Okay. So given that some of these personalities from whom this intercession is sought are shaheed, and the Quran states that shaheed are not dead but are provided for by Allah, what plane are they on, and how do they communicate with Allah to allow for this sort of intercession?
Well, if you mean the prophets or A'imma who were shaheed, or you mean anyone who becomes a shaheed?
The Imams in particular, but I'm also thinking, for instance, of Hazrat Abbas, because we do have that
anyone
tradition.
Becoming shaheed, of course, has a big place with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know, shafa'ah is a sort of hierarchical structure.
Okay.
You see, we have in many traditions that a good man, an old man in a family who has lived his life in worship of Allah, when they die, they can do shafa'ah for example, 40 members of their family, or they can do shafa'ah for 400 members of their family. And then this old man who is very good could be covered on the shafa'ah of someone who is much higher in good actions. And then they are covered on the shafa'ah of A'imma, and then shafa'ah of A'imma is covered on the shafa'ah of the Prophet, peace be on him. At the end, everything culminates in shafa'ah of the Prophet. I think the best example to understand it is again going back to that example of guidance. You see, even guidance that comes from Prophet, through Prophet to us, it comes through different people. A good man in a family would become an exemplar, which might actually change the life of many members of that family. And that in the other would would change into a system of shafa'ah, that he takes them towards the Prophet, and Prophet takes them all together towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the status of shuhada would be the same thing. Shuhada are people who become exemplars and role models, and they might guide many people, or better way, Allah guides many people through them. And therefore they have this role of having shafa'ah. And of course, shafa'ah is for the day of judgment, it's not for now. And therefore, now shuhada, of course, they live in barzakh, but there is no shafa'ah now. Shafa'ah is when the final judgment is made, and then people are going to move with their prophets. Every prophet does shafa'ah. Of course, all those shafa'ah is covered under the shafa'ah of the Prophet, peace be on him, but they move with them to paradise.
Okay, all right. Thank you for that.
Okay.
Next question if we can take from the gents. Sorry, who was before?
Assalamu alaikum. Is trading of the musical instrument haram or not?
If music is not haram, playing it is not haram as well.
No, trading it, like buy and sell.
Trading it. If music is not haram, trading it is not haram as well. You know, in our traditional fiqh we have that playing it, trading it, buying, selling, everything is haram, because it was regarded that the whole thing was haram. Now that, for example, we want to make a film about Imam Hussein, we need music, isn't it? We need a very, very good, high quality music for it. Now, is it haram to buy a piano, for example, for this purpose? It's not haram. Certainly, if the end is not haram, the means are not haram as well.
No, is lottery ticket haram or not?
Lottery is haram. Still is haram, certainly.
Nuzat, please go ahead. Nuzat.
It's a follow-up question on hijab. Some people are of the argument that the Quran, hijab is defined in different ways, especially the covering of the head. They say Quranic ayats do not point to the covering of the head. As long as you are dressed in a non-suggestive manner, and as long as you are amply covered, that should be sufficient. But the covering of the head is not necessarily part of the hijab. What is your point of view on this?
Actually, what Quran refers to is mainly covering of the head. And always you can interpret sentences in many different ways to fit one's view, okay? But certainly, for example, when Quran says, يَا أَيُّهَا النَّبِيُّ قُلْ لِأَزْوَاجِكَ وَبَنَاتِكَ وَنِسَاءِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ, the verse we recited this morning in Surah Ahzab, يُدْنِينَ عَلَيْهِنَّ مِنْ جَلَابِيبِهِنَّ, to bring forth their headscarves. Jalbab was a sort of chador which was put on the head and down. And what was their custom? It was a bit back, and also the chest was exposed to some extent. And therefore Quran says, tell them to bring this forth so that the chest is not exposed, the head is covered. Also, the concept of zina. Zina for women is not makeup. Zina that Quran talks, which is their adornment, is their hair actually. I read one a very elaborate article that how the term zina was used at that time. When Quran says وَلَا يُبْدِينَ زِينَتَهُنَّ إِلَّا لِبُؤُولَتِهِنَّ, they should not expose their adornments, their beauty, so to speak. Zina is beauty. They should not expose their beauty but to their husbands and to such and such relatives. Certainly it doesn't refer to, zina here doesn't mean makeup, so that we, for example, cover the bracelet or pendant or something like that. It is the natural beauty of women, which is certainly, most certainly appearing in the hair. And I mean, if you want to go through a jurisprudential discussion, then all these things can come. But the point is, we are not mujtahids. And I think it is very dangerous that unless we find an alternative mujtahid, not an alternative person who just can suggest views, because we have to deal with these things on the basis of the sources, that's Quran, Hadith, Ijma' and Aql. And these sources should be put together and should produce a fatwa. Unless we have a mujtahid who tells us otherwise, we are not entitled. By entitled I mean in terms of having the qualities, having the authority to decide for ourselves that Quran says this or Quran says that. And I don't think you have any mujtahid in the whole Islam, not in Shia or in Sunni, which says covering the hair is not wajib for women. We have people who have come out and have said this, but they are not mujtahids. And you usually get these furu from the mujtahid, not from ordinary people.
From the women, please. Go ahead.
You mentioned two planes, Nashatul Ula and Nashatul Akhirah.
Yeah.
Where does Alam Zar come?
Alam al-Zar is in I thought you say Alam al-Barzakh. Alam al-Barzakh is in Nashatul Ula, okay? It's not still in Nashatul Akhirah. Alam al-Zar, if we, of course, there are many different explanations about Alam al-Zar. But if we believe that it's a world prior to this world in which there was some sort of existence for souls, then again it would be from Nash'atul Ula. Not it's even prior to Nash'atul Ula, but it's regarded as part of Nash'atul Ula, as Barzakh is regarded as part of Nash'atul Ula. Nash'atul Akhirah comes after the blowing of trumpets.
Next question over there. Can you give him the mic, please?
My question is about beard. I have done some reference or some research, and also there is an article or a book written by Ayatollah Fazlullah that a beard is highly recommended, although it's not haram to shave.
Yeah, you see, no Shia jurist has ever said shaving is haram. They all say ihtiyat wajib. And ihtiyat wajib means that we don't have a fatwa, go to another jurist. That's the meaning of ihtiyat. Either you don't shave your beard, okay, because this ihtiyat is a precaution, or if you don't want to do ihtiyat, I don't have an opinion on this, please go to another jurist. And since all jurists say it's ihtiyat wajib, so you don't know what to do. If Fazlullah says it's not haram, then everyone can go and follow him. Right.
Ghulam, you next.
I have three questions, so ask one at a time.
Maybe one at a time, and then we'll keep coming back to you.
The first one is a follow-up on the issue of hijab. The first one is on the follow-up on the issue of hijab.
Yes.
I go to many Sunni mosques, Sunni centers, and you notice there that many women are not covered, although then there is a mixed gathering. So I asked one Shia ulama, alim, and I asked him why are they doing it, and so he said that the interpretation of the hijab, the scarf covering the head, is different among the Ahlul Sunnah than the interpretation within the Shias. Can you clarify that?
I don't think so. No, there is no difference whatsoever. Yes, there are some very extremist Ahlul Sunnah who regard covering the face as wajib, putting burqa as wajib. That's the only difference. There is no other difference. Well, we don't regard that as wajib, and majority of Ahlul Sunnah don't regard that as wajib. Only a minority of Ahlul Sunnah regard covering the face as wajib as well. No.
From the ladies.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikhna.
Alaikum assalam.
I just wanted to ask you a question which is kind of double-barreled in a way. Many of us are from backgrounds which are not Muslim background, and we became Muslim along the way, and therefore some of our family members are not Muslim. My first question is, when one of our family members passes away, what are we allowed to actually make Fatih for them and make dua for them? And the second question is a more generalized one, which is, as you were saying yesterday in your topic about Jannah, there are different levels, and you were saying that the mu'mineen have higher status than, some have higher status than the other. Therefore, what is the highest level that somebody who believes in God but is not Muslim and doesn't accept the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what is the highest level that they can aspire to?
Well, this second question I really don't know. I don't know how Allah places people in their levels. We know, or we believe, this is our conviction, that certainly the highest levels could only be obtained through the finest of all religions, which is, of course, the religion of Islam. However, as you know, Islam has different interpretations as well, and therefore sometimes some people might interpret Islam in a way that it would become even more backward than some other religions, which we do not regard to be as good as Islam. So we really don't know how people are placing their levels. We only know that if you have pure Tawheed, which comes through the Quran. Of course, it was in other books as well, but it's somehow lost. If you have pure Tawheed, which comes through the Quran, if you believe in the last prophets, which is the most honorable of all prophets, if you follow the household of the Prophet who are partners of the Quran, you will be placed at the highest levels. Then you can deduce one by one these things, and certainly people of other religions are placed in paradise as well. People who even were mushrik but they did not know, they had not received a revelation, most probably they will be placed at a level, we don't know what level this is going to be. Certainly they are not going to go to hell. So it's very difficult to determine. About prayers, we have an explicit verse in the Quran which says that ما كان للنبي والذين آمنوا أن يستغفروا للمشركين. Prophet ولو كان آباؤهم. Prophet and mu'minun should not seek istighfar for mushrikeen, even if they are their fathers and they are their kins and that. But this is about mushrikun. What about people of the book? There is no direct injunction in the Quran or in that relation as far as I know in the hadith. So probably we can pray, and we can pray that Allah probably gives them a good life in hereafter, inshallah.
Next question over there. You had a question to ask? No, you, yeah. Yes, please, go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. Just a comment first. Because of the information availability through the internet and everything, I was doing some reading on some of the rulings of Ayatollah Sanai, and there was a question asked to him about hijab, and it was posed by a lady in the U.S. who said that it's very difficult for her to wear the hijab because of the political atmosphere and situation she's in, and if she could wear something that would cover her head, and his answer was to wear a wig. So that's something that you may want to also
But this is a very extraordinary situation. I mean, in extraordinary situations, you are allowed to do things which you are not allowed to do in ordinary situations. The way the lady probably has put the question, I guess Ayatollah Sani thought that she is going to be killed next morning in the street. I said, okay, so you put a wig on your head. But this is not an ordinary case. So as I said, in ordinary cases, the ulama would not allow such things.
Oh, sorry, and my question was, or your comments on one of the things you said during one of your lectures was, it seems a little, I'm paraphrasing, so I might be putting words in your mouth, seems a little unfair that you live for such a short period of time, and yet your actions in that short period of time will determine what happens in the life hereafter, which will be for forever.
Yeah.
So,
well, certainly, if you go to paradise, you say it's quite fair, isn't it? The only time when you say it's not fair is when you go to hell. Okay. All of us, when we go to paradise, well, it's quite fair. We had to come here. We worked for it. We had we toiled for it. Now, when we go to hell, you see, the point is a very good question. Actually, the question was put to Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salam, and he replied in a way which could be construed in other ways as well. Now I give his reply first, and then I try, because he answered according to the level of the person who had asked the question. He said that yes, the person who goes to hell has, for example, lived for 50, 60 years, but was he to live forever, he would have committed sin forever. And the person who goes to paradise, due to that 50, 60 years of action, was he to live forever, he would have been good forever. Now, the outcome of this argument is this, that when you spoil your soul and it becomes polluted and becomes evil, it doesn't matter how long it took to become evil. What is important now is how long it takes to change that evil to good. And apparently in this world it's much easier to change evil to good by istighfar, by repentance. In the next world it's not possible anymore, because these doors are closed to human beings, because there is no action anymore. So what happens, you go through a process for that purification, and that if it is not purified in that 50,000 years of Darul Akhirah or Day of Resurrection, then of course the hell. What Allah mentions in the Quran is in response to people who say, let us come out. We have now, Rabbana absirna wa sami'na, akhrijna na'mal salihan. We have now understood and we have now seen. So let us out, we will do good things. Allah says, no, if I let them out, they go back to the same things that they were doing. And apparently that means the soul is not yet corrected, rectified. And as soon as it's rectified, it comes out. But it might take a long, long time. So it doesn't go this way that, okay, how many years I have committed sin, the same number of years I have to be punished. No. When you pollute your soul, then it's very difficult to refine it again.
A question from the ladies. Yeah.
I would like to know, was this lana introduced by the imams themselves, or is it something that came up after they were gone? Because
no, lana is introduced by the Quran, as you know.
Yeah.
We have lots of lans in the Quran. What was this verse we were reciting today in Surah Ahzab? That's وَالَّذِينَ يُؤْذُونَ what is it? It says إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما إن الذين يؤذون الله ورسوله لعنهم الله في الدنيا والآخرة. Those who annoy Allah and His Prophet, Allah has cursed them in this world and next. Now, okay, it's very simple. Did Yazid annoy the Prophet or he did not by killing Hussein? So in fact, Quran has started cursing such people, and we are just following the Quran in this regard. And yes, in Ziyarah, Ashura, and others, these la'an have come from Ayyam alayhi salam, because they are following the Quran in this. It's real hurting Prophet and breaking his heart, which deserves la'na according to the Quran, and we follow that.
Next question from the gents. No, Raza, you've had a lot of patience. Your turn now.
Assalamu alaikum. Yeah, to continue and to lana and to curse, to me it seems it is a sin to do that, because Islam wants peace and it wants to forgive. And as far as my reading goes, that as long as a human being cannot forgive, he can never be at peace with himself nor with his fellow men. And I think that, so that's one part of it. My question is it possible for us to add something to the dua? For example, I'm thinking of that in the dua that we recited during the Amal, to say that, oh Allah, injustices was done to our Imams, and give us the strength to stop such evil in the future. So if these type of things are said in our du'as, it'll be specific enough to encourage people not to have hate, but to take action when it is required. And in today's circumstances, not only in the past. That's one part of my, if you can comment on this one. And the second part is that when I look at the Shia teachings, I'm trying to differentiate between teachers and teaching. We seem to give a lot of importance to personalities and rituals that we follow, rather than the teaching itself. I think if we were to follow the teachings, we would avoid a lot of problems in promoting our faith. Thank you.
Sorry, I did not understand the second part.
The second part is that if we focus on the teachings of Islam, without the personalities attached to it, because we seem to give, for example, the Sunnis complain that we give so much importance to our Ahlul Bayt than even the Prophet, for example, and it is quite problematic with other. So personalities, if it kept lower rather than what the personalities taught us, the teachings itself to me seems to be more important than the personalities. Would you comment on that?
Yeah. Well, let's begin with the second issue. I think this is something which was right from the beginning of Islam was a point of controversy. You see, some Muslims tried to separate the Quran from the Prophet, saying Prophet was a teacher of the Quran, he was just a means bringing revelation, now we follow the Quran. And the most outstanding example of that is this tradition which is reported by all Sunnis and Shias. It's reported in most authentic books of Sunni hadith as well, like Bukhari, that on his deathbed, Prophet asked for pen and paper and said, let me write something for you so that you are not misguided after me. And Umar ibn al-Khattab was there and he said, Hasbuna kitabullah, we have the book of God, we don't need your opinion. This is, the way this approach, what I put it to be a very arrogant approach, first of all. And secondly, how can you separate Quran from the Prophet? The whole Quran is understood through the personality of the Prophet. Quran could be interpreted in thousands of ways. However, when we come to interpret it, we say, this is how Ali, peace be on him, acted. This is how the Prophet acted. This is how these companions of the Prophet behave. So we take those behaviors as an explanation of these verses. Why do we need an imam beside the Quran? Why the Prophet, peace be on him, said that إِنِّي تَارَكٌ فِيكُمُ الثَّقْلَيْنِ كِتَابَ اللَّهِ وَإِتْرَتِي, I leave with you two precious things, the book of God and my household, that they would not part from each other until the day of judgment. It means that they are part and parcel of each other. You cannot understand Quran without them. You cannot follow them without Quran. They are one and the same thing. One is written, the other is acting, the other is alive. So I don't think, especially with religion, you just separate Jesus Christ from Christianity. Can you do that? Christianity means Jesus Christ. There's nothing else. There's no teaching, you see. It means Jesus Christ. Judaism means Musa alayhi salam. The whole Abrahamic faith means Abraham. You see, in this field of spirituality, it's the spiritual teacher who is more important than what he says. So we really cannot separate them from each other. And there comes this concept of la'an and forgiveness, you see. Then, of course, if some people try to separate that, if some people try to somehow possess this spiritual gift, which is not separable from the spiritual teacher, they possess it and say, okay, you go away, we have it, we act according to it. This is why it's not something that we can forgive. Why we do this la'an all the time? It's because to remind ourselves that, look, we shouldn't lose course. We shouldn't lose our way. This is the way we have to go. And I think this issue between Shia and Sunni has two faces. One face is that, yes, of course, we have our opinions. Strongly we have our opinions. There is no forgiveness in that. There is no compromise with it in those ideas, that Ahlul Bayt should not have been taken from their positions. Ahlul Bayt are the partners of the Quran. However, the other face of it is that, okay, now we have differences of opinion, but we don't want to disrespect each other. We don't want to fight against each other. There's no point doing that. It's silly to do that. Then, okay, let's respect each other. Respect each other doesn't mean to accept each other's opinions. Just respect. We do not dishonor you, you do not dishonor us. We do not disrespect you, you do not disrespect us. But it doesn't mean that in our private belief and in our heart, we have accepted and agreed with what you say.
Doctor, comment on Allahumma lan katalat Amir al-Mu'mineen, we're talking lana. I think maybe a point of clarification, what exactly does that mean? In the clarification side of it. Would it be, say, my prayers is that may Allah remove the blessings, His blessings on the individuals and those people who were perpetrated and those people who were responsible, because then the drive is, I'm included if I'm doing anything that is contradictory to that.
Yeah.
Can you comment on that?
Yeah, I think that's a very good explanation of that. We disown them because if we do not do that, we have somehow become their partners in what they did. We have these sets of traditions very much coming from Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, that if you are content, if you agree with some action, with some behavior, you are a partner in that. Now we have in many verses of the Quran, we have that, for example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addresses the Jews at the time of the Prophet saying that, why did you kill prophets? And certainly they had not killed prophets. It were their forefathers who had killed the prophets. But Allah tells them, why did you kill the prophets if you are truthful? And the question was put to Aimah alayhi salam, why are they addressed for it? Why they didn't do it? It was their predecessors who did it. Imam alayhi salam said, because they were content, they did not disown those actions. They were quite proud of their forefathers, of what they did. And they agreed. And therefore they are partners, they have a share of that in their reward as well, or in their punishment. So it's quite important that we disown these things. We distance ourselves from it. And in a sense, yes, we say that we are not going to go near these type of actions at all.
Question from the sisters? Okay, we have a question from the sisters here.
My question pertains to you touched very briefly on mystics, and I'd like to know what is your respected opinion about Maulana Rumi and how one should read him.
Well, Rumi is a very, very respectable mystic. A man who was really gifted and who was given lots of grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's why when you recite his poetry, you see it's full of wisdom. Wisdom which is clear that it comes from an understanding of the Quran, an understanding of faith which is not ordinarily available for ordinary people. So, well, we regard him very highly as a respected Arif and scholar.
Yes.
Yeah, Assalamu alaikum. There's a burning issue, so to speak, right now about Zakir Naik from Bombay. I don't know if you know about that. And he said about Yazid, and he said peace be on Yazid. And there's a rebuttal from all of the community, Shia communities around the world. What do you have to say to that?
I think Zakir Naik, I don't know, is very simple-minded man. I mean, I saw some of the responses coming from his supporters that, okay, Yazid was a tabi'i, and for tabi'un we are allowed to say Raziyallah an, although we do not agree with them. I wonder, you just write to them, this guy killed the grandson of the Prophet. What do you mean he was a tabi'i or whatever? And I think Zakir Naik needs to be enlightened about this issue of the grandson of the Prophet, and probably he's not aware of the enormity of what has happened. And that's why, just as a common type of standard of many Sunni scholars, whoever comes from first or second generation of Muslims, they say Raziyallah and Rahmatullah alayh, while we know what they did, what really they did to Islam. It's quite clear.
Yes.
I'm going to ask a question which will be an extension of what one lady was talking about, observance of, even let's say, the Eid prayers, or Eid day. And it really, actually, it casts a big light on the fact that we have no leadership in Islam today here. There's no one voice who can speak for Islam. There's a Sunni voice, there's a Shia voice, but there's no one Sunni voice, nor there is one Shia voice. So what happens in this vacuum that we all live in the West, you live in the West, when those questions, burning questions are asked of us, Muslims or Islam, then the Jews explain it, the Christians explain it, even the atheists explain it, half-hearted Muslims explain it, so that they have an Islamic name, they explain it, but there is no one official voice. Don't you think that it will be good for us if we had an equivalent of a Muslim Pope who speaks for all of us? There is no more interpretation by this mullah or that muttahid, just one voice.
Good. He's the moderator of tomorrow's session here. We were just discussing with the moderator of tomorrow's session. We are going to have 10-12 discussion groups tomorrow, inshallah. And
just make sure your attendance.
Yeah.
All right. You want an answer to that one? Come tomorrow.
No, the point
You'll
is
be the question.
just more. We were actually posing some questions for every table that they think about it and they come with an answer and we discuss it. One of the questions was, is it good to have a Muslim Pope or not? So this is what we are going to discuss tomorrow, inshallah. And is it good that we have one voice in Muslim world or in Shia world, or is not good? So we are going to discuss that tomorrow, and it's quite related to our topic, inshallah.
Yes.
I want to revisit the question of music. You mentioned that up to a certain time music was considered haram, and now music is allowed within certain parameters, like the holy music and as long as it is not the dancing and the vulgar kind. I have sat in a church and have listened to beautiful music, which is from a choir or from a inspirational music as well. As long as it is good music, do you see a time when we can play good music in a mosque?
Well, some people even do it now. It depends whether it would go with the philosophy of the mosque or not. I think the type of worship in Christianity is very different from the type of worship in Islam. So I don't think it would be befitting the type of worship that we have, that we play music in the mosque. However, this issue of music has been controversial right from the beginning. It's not that until the time they regarded it to be haram and then it was halal. No, it was controversial right from the beginning. There were some ulama who even in old ages said that no, it's not halal in its entirety. Some music is halal, some music is haram, but the majority were of the opinion that is completely haram. I remember at the beginning of revolution in Iran, now we had a TV, okay? We had radio and TV. And of course, the majority opinion of all ulama was that music is totally haram. Now, one very, very main question was that, what about the title of the news? Okay, we need a music. When you want to say it's time of news, time for news, you need a type of music. And I remember at that time they allowed it very cautiously, because Imam Khomeini's views was far ahead of anyone else, and he was of course acting very cautiously not to somehow disrespect other maraji. And I remember many ulama who at the time of the news, they wanted to listen to the news, they just turned the sound low so that they don't hear the music, and then they turn it high, you see. But now the problem is completely resolved. You see that music is played. Well, of course, it was Imam Khomeini who actually allowed a music band to go and play in front of him, so that everyone knows that this is not haram. And then it was allowed on TV, on radio. And then, of course, to draw the line is very, very difficult. Okay, where do we draw the line between haram music and halal music? Because you say, okay, spiritual music, or a music which is somehow adds effect to some sort of value that you want to show. I mean, we want to show something about the Prophet, peace be on him. I mean, imagine this film, The Message, without its music. Did it have the same effect as it had it with that music? So now, okay, you need all those instruments and players who play it and all these things, and then they must just, with a twist of the tone, and it is changed into some sort of music which you can dance with, and you can play it in parties and these things. So drawing the line is very, very difficult, and that's why now the ulama are saying that it's subjective. You have to decide for yourself what is halal music, what is haram music. It's very difficult.
Question from the sisters.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam.
The Christians, Nabi Isa, he came with the book Injil, and his followers are the Christians. However, they do not believe in Tawheed, and they put the emphasis on Jesus Christ as the Son of God. Do we know of any such religion that is Christianity but not believing in Jesus Christ as the Son of God, but only in the book revealed to them?
There were, at the beginning of Christianity, this idea of Jesus being Son of God became an official idea after 3-4 centuries after the advent of Christianity. So there were controversies. Yes, there were people who believed in Tawheed, did not believe that Jesus was Son of God, but they were all somehow defeated. And now the official understanding of all sects of Christianity is that Jesus is Son of God.
So then, this is just a follow-up on your answer, is that they're committing shirk. So what will happen when they are the followers, but not really, because they have divided God?
Although they believe in Trinity, Quran does not regard them to be mushrik. It's a type of explanation of the nature of God, which is not acceptable, and in effect, it results in shirk. But Quran does not regard them as mushrik. Quran regards them as Ahlul Kitab, people of the book, that we have, of course, orders about how we have to treat them, how we have to behave with them, and they are regarded as people of the book that on the day of judgment they will be, of course, judged according to their own book.
Yes, sir.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam.
My question to you is this.
We live in a very pluralized society. Religion and religiosity has created a lot of problems. There have been fights, people have been killed, wars. Now I am asking you, there's so many books have recently come out which is even denying God. God is not great. Religion poisons your mind. God delusions, and there are so many other previous books too. My question to you is, I am a secular human being. I don't believe in any religion. Can I be in a position to decide what is right and wrong on my own? And can I be closer to God?
Can you, sorry, what?
Can I be closer to God?
Well, if you do not believe in any religion, you believe in God but you do not believe in any religion, not atheist.
Yes.
Not atheist.
I am not an atheist. I do not believe in any organized church or organized religion.
Mm-hmm. You see, I think we have to differentiate between church and Islam. This secularism is an outcome of a history of church in Western culture. We should not really project that on the history of Islamic countries and the relationship between religion and society and the state in Islam. Islam in many ways have been secular, the way that Christians wanted the faith to be secular. For example, in Islam we didn't have a pope. Ayatollah does not have the authority of pope. Do not mix these two. You see, Ayatollah is just someone who's learned. You may follow him, you may just throw him away, isn't it? Pope, you cannot. Pope is religion.
Mr. Mohammed, do you know that in these communities, we people who do not believe the dictums and teachings of Sistanis were not even allowed to pray in a mosque separately? What are you talking about?
Well,
you're a pope.
No, that's not problem of Islam. That's problem of the community, you see. I don't think you should mix these two with each other. Now, let me continue. In Islam, for example, you don't need anyone to marry. I mean, marriage is not a sacrament. You don't need a priest or a church so that your marriage is valid. You can marry outside the mosque. You can have not even a clergy to conclude your contract of marriage. So it's secular. It's not religious. No. Reciting, you can recite it yourself. You don't need a priest to do it for you. You don't need a church to do it for you. So I think when we talk about secularism and secular society, we have to be very careful not to actually confuse between Islam and Christianity. This idea of secularism and separation and all these things, animosity towards established religion, towards organized religion, have all sprang from this organization of church. We never have had this organization in Islam. This is what we have to discuss tomorrow and what Salim referred to. Shouldn't we have one voice in Islam? Now, is it good to have one voice in Islam? Well, we have to discuss it. Is it good to have one authority? We never, of course, after the Imams, this authority is not given to anyone. Anyone, you can go to Qom now, I don't know, you may be 60 years old, you may go to Qom now, study, and in 10 years' time become an Ayatollah. Okay? And you might have your opinions. There is nothing that should ordain you. There is no church that should accept you at the beginning and then ordain you and give you that authority. No. The authority comes from knowledge and followership. So I think when it comes to secularism and these things and organized religion, we have really to differentiate between Islam and Christianity.
You don't answer my question.
What?
My question to you is this thing. I do not ascribe to any religion. Can I be closer to God? Can I be in a position to make right or wrong?
Closer to God than whom? You see, when you say closer to, you couldn't be closer to God than Prophet Muhammad, could you? No. Because he receives direct guidance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay. You couldn't be closer to God than someone who closely follows Prophet Muhammad, could you? Because he received that indirect guidance.
So you are telling me that I have to be Muslim to come to closer to God. That's what you are telling me.
You have to follow a prophet. This is what I tell you. Guidance of God doesn't come directly to ordinary human beings. It comes through prophets.
So
now, whether you accept...
Why does the God say in Quran that I have read my spirit unto you? Your Quran says that God has put spirit in me. Wouldn't that spirit...
I don't have a Quran. I follow Quran of Muhammad, peace be on him. You say your Quran? Yeah.
I'm just being a devil's advocate, please.
Okay.
I'm just talking as if I'm an outsider.
Okay.
I'm talking to you exoterically. Please know that I'm a believer. I'm just telling you.
I know. That's just for the sake of argument. Okay.
You live among society.
You just want to make me tired. Okay, go ahead.
Can we move on, please? Because there are some other people that have questions that have been raising their hand tirelessly, please.
Answer my question.
Yes. I answered your question. I told you. Now, what is in my Quran you were saying, sorry? You say it's written in my Quran that...
I am telling you that without being a member of a religious body, can I be in a position to make decision right or wrong, which is acceptable to God? Okay, that's what it is.
Okay, I tell you, not being a professional doctor, for example, can you make decisions about prescribing something for a sick person? You can, due to experience, for example, or because you have seen someone doing so. But this is not something on which you and others can rely. Yes, of course, because religion is not something that could be judged by standards of our scientific procedures. Anyone can come and say, okay, I make my own judgment, I do it. But just compare it with the procedures of scientific approval. You cannot make such judgments unless you are a professional. Or you cannot make sound judgments unless you are a professional. Now, professional people in this field are those who are guided by Allah directly. If not, those who have learned it from them. Otherwise, of course, everyone can make their own judgments.
My question is, what's your opinion on mujtahids or ayatollahs or Imam Khomeini specifically issuing fatwas that, like in the Salman Rushdie's case, for Muslims to kill him because, say it was somebody from here, from Europe, or somebody killed him, they would be committing first-degree murder. Can you say, going forward,
No, he only said Salman Rushdie is a murtad, and his punishment is death. Now, he didn't have jurisdiction over British government or British land to carry out that. What he said was that he is a murtad, and his punishment is death. Now, if people want to carry out that, that's not something that he really had in the area of his jurisdiction. It was just a response to the type of ridiculous thing that Salman Rushdie had written against the Prophet. It was not something that, he could do, in practice, do anything about it.
Yeah, if I can just, I agree with you, but what I'm saying is, you see the way the Muslim world is, or the fanatics we have, like to them, something like this is trivial, they probably go and do it. And they take it so seriously. I'm just saying the implications are very...
He wanted it to be taken seriously, of course. But he didn't do anything wrong. He just issued his opinion that he is murtad and his punishment is death. Now, if Muslims go about and do it, that's a different issue, but he really wanted Muslims to take this seriously.
Yes, from the sisters? Yeah. I'll take one last question in all fairness, because we need to provide the Sheikh some time to rest. I'll take one more question from the sisters over here and then allow everybody an opportunity to prepare for Salah, because in about another 10 minutes it'll be time for Salah. One last question, please.
Thank you. It has been brought to my attention that when a Muslim brother or a sister dies, after they've done the ghusl and kafan, just before they do the prayers, the namaz, and take them to the cemetery, they do ziyarat-e-ashura, and then they do the namaz-e-mayyat, and then they take them to the cemetery. Could you give me your, could you comment on that, whether it is a good thing or is it something that can be avoided? Or because there's a lot of lana that we read in that ziyarat-e-ashura, and we are delaying the burial of that mayyat.
I think the issue of lana should not be an issue here. I think we discussed that. Allah has cursed some people in the Quran, and that has been reflected in Ziyarat Ashura. However, it's not compulsory to do that. It has been a custom after Ashura in many societies that whenever any dear one passes away, before they start mourning for the deceased, they do mourning for Imam Hussein alayhi salam. And that's why they recite Ziyarah Ashura. It's a custom, it's not something which is compulsory.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Okay.
Hasan, Jazakumullah. Thank you very much. Doctor, thank you very much.
Us Hussein, Us Hussein. उस हुसैन इब्ने हैदर पे लाखों सलाम, लाखों सलाम। नबी के नवासे पे लाखों सलाम, लाखों सलाम। जिसको दोषे नबी पर बिठाया गया, जिसका जन्नत से जोड़ा मंगाया गया, जिसके भाई को जहर पिलाया गया, जिसको बैठे बिठाए सताया गया, उस हुसैन, उस हुसैन, उस हुसैन इब्ने